Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the call. My name is Chris Rowe. I'm the Worldwide Vice President for Pre-Sales for the Continuous Delivery business here in CA. I'm very excited about the new opportunities we have around blazemeter. I want to spend a few minutes initially talking about where this fits in our end-to-end story. And obviously the way we always start is by talking about what's happening in the application economy. And we know that every organization is struggling to stay relevant in what's become a very new digitally connected world. Their customers, their business partners demanding outstanding digital experiences through the channels that their customers are demanding they deliver through APIs, through mobile, through web. We have to produce outstanding experiences for our customers to keep relevant. And those brand new digital business models are changing business ecosystems. So, if you don't adapt, you don't survive. So when we think about, what does that mean to an organization regardless of what industry sector they're in, it means they have to figure out how they hugely accelerate the pace of innovation that they're bringing to market through their software. And how do they do that? They really have to think about transforming the way they build, they plan, they deliver their software investments. They have to be much more agile in how they can respond to the changing market demands. When new innovators come in, when new digital business models appear, how can they react fast through software to stay relevant in that market? And they have to vastly accelerate the pace of software development, right through requirements, through coding, through testing, through release, and all the way through monitoring production. And as they do that, because this is all about customer experience, when they build those new software development practices and processes and methodology, they have to put quality number one in their new software processes. So companies out there, they're embracing agile, they're embracing continuous delivery, continuous testing, and continuous improvement. And it's tough for them to do that. And in a world where software has become your brand, every time you have a failed or degraded customer interaction, that has a direct and measurable negative impact on your business. And for mobile, more than even web, poor performance is as bad as a function that fails. So you can see on the slide here, organizations have challenges to getting to this nirvana of continuous delivery, and it's not just in one phase of how they plan, design, and build and test software. It's in every phase. Whether it's requirements, whether it's development, QA, test, release, or operation, there are challenges that are preventing organization going at the speed they need to go at. And I've just highlighted one metric off this slide, the bottom right. When you look at average cost of downtime per minute for an organization, it can be thousands of dollars. But more critical to me is, 53% of visits through a mobile app are abandoned if the mobile site takes more than 3 seconds to load. And it's not just, they don't do the transaction that day. These customers never come back. So if we can't build solutions that innovate and not just give us a slick experience, but that perform well, we measure the bleed of customers as they move to our competitors. So next slide, please. We've obviously, at CA in our continuous delivery business, been building out a portfolio to help customers transform to these new continuous delivery approaches and solve the problems we saw on the previous slide. And actually, we have an excellent track record and some very compelling metrics of helping customers accelerate and improve the release cadence, improve the quality, reduce the time and cost involved in building innovation. And now with CA blazemeter, it helps us now extend that even further and move to the critical areas of performance testing, and not just performance testing as traditional the last waterfall phase we do before something goes in production, but being able to do the right performance testing at the right time, both shift left, do it early enough so we can test and find problems early and correct them early, but also do them on demand at the scale we need to. So as you can see, being able to do early load testing and scale it up to 25 million users, or create different scales that we know that not only are going to meet the demand we've projected, but maybe to meet demand if our application goes viral. So customer experience is absolutely key. If we can't build applications that are functionally robust, easy to use, but more importantly, will scale to the levels that our customer expect, again, we lose business, and we can actually measure the bleed as we go through that. So our products accelerate the business outcome at those key parts of the SDLC, and customers get measured on the quality and brand of their customers. Next slide, please. We've been talking to our customers about this, and we know that every large organization we're dealing with are planning or executing a journey to go from where they are today, maybe traditional on-premise, waterfall type software development, through to cloud forward, agile, containerized, all fully automated continuous delivery type platforms. And it's a huge journey for them. And what we've been doing in CA is making sure that we build an integrated end-to-end continuous delivery ecosystem, so as they go on that journey, we can support them right from agile planning through to agile operations, and all the pieces in the middle around service virtualization, API testing, performance testing, test data management, requirements, agile requirements. We can actually accelerate all the key pieces of that journey as they go along. And for me, blazemeter is the obvious next piece of that puzzle that we haven't been able to talk about to this date, where we can really make a massive difference to the pace and value that people can drive through their software things. And I'm delighted on the call to hand over to Alan.
Great. So my name's Todd Feinroth, and I run sales for blazemeter, and I'm going to be talking about basically two things. One, the sales motion that we typically go through at blazemeter. Number two, I want to address some of the questions that came up, very relevant questions that came up last Friday around open source, how has open source, and other questions. So next slide. So when people ask me who is blazemeter, I basically tell people and customers that we're the leading, SaaS and on-premise performance testing platform. Basically, it's in service to Alone and other people were talking about this morning. It's all about delivering applications much faster, more reliably, obviously with better insight, through a performance testing platform. The application goes down, doesn't perform right, especially within the realms of Black Friday and Cyber Monday coming up. Companies will lose tons of money. So that's basically what we do. Next slide, please. So who do we sell to? Who's our practitioner, our target audience? To me, they fall into two major groups. One, performance engineering teams. And what these guys do, as Alon was describing a few minutes ago, they do performance testing on critical applications, whether it's a web or mobile application, and they ensure that we have scale and they perform to the needs of the business. Also, in the service of the continuous delivery journey we're on, we also sell to DevOps engineering teams, and they're responsible for obviously developing and testing revenue-producing applications much faster and more reliably. So to me, those are our target audiences, especially in the practitioner space. Next slide. So let me walk through kind of a typical sales motion that we go through. It's very much a land and expand motion. So typically, a practitioner, an engineer, will contact blazemeter to learn about the open source JMeter project, and also blazemeter and how we compare and what additional value blazemeter brings to their JMeter processes. Then a practitioner will typically they'll download a free trial of blazemeter, and they'll get immediate value either that day or very soon on. And then they'll typically buy an online plan right from our website through a Stripe and credit card. And then we'll get notified of that engagement, and then a blazemeter rep will basically complete the discovery and position for a more strategic conversation. Because when we look at when a customer buys online a plan, we look at that as really a lead, and that lead basically gives us the entree into having a more more comprehensive conversation with the prospect. And typically, those land deals are going to be between $30,000 and $75,000 for an enterprise class of customer. And we'll sell to the performance engineering team, and typically that could be a project. And I'll reference a couple of examples with Tesla and Disney in a couple minutes. And then what we'll do then is we'll expand the conversation into the engineering team, to have more continuous testing positioning. And we'll talk about an example of that with Walmart Brazil that we closed. So it's definitely a land and expand, journey, and this all happened in the space of maybe a few weeks for the first sale, and then moving on, to an expansion sale within 4 to 5 months. And then sometimes we'll have to go on site, if it's a competitive situation with a chief competitor like HP or SOSA, and a lot of times we'll want to do an on-site or like a technical workshop to engage, key business and technology stakeholders. But the important thing is that the actual technical win of the sales motion can be done off-site in a remote fashion. We can do the POC, we can do the sale, we can do all the technical win, without ever going on site. And when we go on site, we'll have those key meetings, those material meetings that are going to make a difference and close the sale and establish those executive relationships. When we go on site and we do that expand deal, typically we can close a deal in the $200,000 range within 4 to 6 months. And with Disney, we closed a $554,000 deal in March, and with Walmart, we did a $300,000 deal last year. So leading to possibly a much larger transaction later this year or early 2017. So that's typically kind of the land and expand sales motion. So here's an example. Let's look at Tesla. Oh, sorry, the next slide. Great, thank you. So let's look at Tesla for a second. So Tesla reached out to us earlier this year, and then we around the performance testing project. They actually went silent for several weeks. They reached out to us again 48 hours before the Tesla Model 3 release, which was being announced on March 31 this year by Elon Musk through a series of webcasts and podcasts. So they were actually going to be doing tests that week, the last week of March, and they were using a competitive incumbent solution, which is Microsoft Visual Studio. So they had a 24-hour window to opportunity to actually conduct these tests. And the Microsoft Visual Studio testing cratered. It absolutely failed miserably. So they were in DEFCON 5 mode. So they called us up on March 28th. They actually conducted a test for them overnight, and it cost them $20,000. It was a very complex set of tests. We actually worked through the night with our team in Palo Alto, Israel, and the customer's team over in the East Bay in California. And they wanted to do a very complex test of 250,000 concurrent users, which Visual Studio could not perform. They could not scale. We successfully ran the test. We had a very, very successful event. And as you guys may remember, back on March 31, they announced the Model 3. They had 240,000 sales online, pre-orders of the cars. It was the most successful sale of any web-based product in the world. So it was a very, very successful test. And then the most important thing is that we're actually going to go back in there now, and we're going to go have a continuous testing, continuous delivery conversation with Tesla this quarter. So that's one example of a land and expand model. Next one, please. Another expand model example is with Disney. So they've been a customer of blazemeter since 2013. They did a renewal back in June for $200,000, and they bought back then we were pricing by a number of tests, by what we call test credits. They bought 2,400 load tests. They exceeded the maximum load test for the contract back in December of 2015. They actually had $47,000 in overage fees, plus another $315,000 in on-demand tests. And on-demand tests were doing tests for between 40 and 100,000 concurrent users. So they racked up, obviously, $360,000 in overages. The major cause for this was the March Madness campaign through ESPN and Oscars, which took place in February. And then obviously blazemeter alerted Disney in December and February about the overages, so we can engage them and right-size their license in their commercial arrangement. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in the end, we did a two-year extension to Disney. We changed the test model to what we call a virtual user hour model, which gave them much more flexibility, and we sold them 10 million virtual user hours per year for 2 years. The TCV of the deal was $554,000. We signed the deal the last day of the quarter, in March. And more importantly, Disney is putting in a chargeback model so they can charge back to the individual business units like ESPN and Parks and Recreation and Disney Online and 6 other business units. So the group who we sold to here in Seattle can recover those costs, right, and actually make it a cost-neutral, not a profit center, but at least a cost-neutral transaction. So that's an example of an expand model. And most importantly, with Disney, we are really just dipping our toe in the water with this. There are several other business units that are using either manual efforts or they're using HP Load Runner. Some are using SOSTA that we know about. So there's, this is a $160 billion organization. So you can imagine, the opportunity we can take on to even sell, further expand deals with Disney. So next slide, please. So let's talk about some of the questions that come up. These are very relevant questions as relating to the BlazeMeter. How do we monetize open source? And this has been a very common question that we get. And Ray did a great job of putting together an explanation of how BlazeMeter actually is able to monetize an open source paradigm. Next slide, please. So a couple key points. So BlazeMeter is not an open source project. BlazeMeter is a commercial software. What we do is we have the ability to extend the capabilities and limitations of open source projects like JMeter, Sunnyam, and Gatling. Then what happens is there are hundreds of thousands of JMeter users out there, and these guys work for very large organizations. So they will start using JMeter, they'll become very proficient, and they'll soon run into some challenges around scalability, reporting, and so forth, and integration with APM. So they'll naturally gravitate right to BlazeMeter, and that's how we'll engage them. So that's a very typical sales motion and engagement that we'll go through. Next slide, please. So how do we close big deals? Ray put together a response here regarding the analogous to Salesforce on Workday and how these guys close big deals. And we actually have the ability as well to close large deals, and we'll reference a couple of them in the next slide. To give you an example, in the last year, actually in the last year, these are some of the deals that we've closed. They're six-figure deals, some are multi-year relationships. I mentioned Disney, a $554,000 deal. There are 3x over the license capacity, and obviously, again, to me, there's a lot more expansion to be had within Disney. Walmart Brazil, we did a $300,000 two-year deal. They were 5x over the license capacity, and so just in Walmart Brazil, and now we're engaging with them on their Cyber Monday and Black Friday campaign as well. Target, we did a $270,000 two-year deal. We actually replaced SOSTA and HP Load Runner in December of 2015, and they're a very reputable customer. We're very, very happy. NFL, we have a $150,000 relationship with NFL. And they're using BlazeMeter for an entire CI/CD code delivery pipeline. So we're very integrated into the very fabric of how they deliver applications today. We just recently closed a deal at Nissan. This is actually a land deal, and it's a $100,000 one-year deal at Nissan. We feel that there's a ton more expansion opportunities at Nissan. And IBM acquired a company called Clearleaf, and we did a $140,000 renewal expansion deal there as well. Let's just give you an example of, we have the ability to close six-figure deals. Many of these companies, in fact, all of them, I believe, are JMeter experts, and they soon realize, the limitations of open source, and they gravitated right to BlazeMeter, and this is the result. So some common questions around leveraging the customer base. BlazeMeter has over 300 enterprise customers worldwide. We have global reach. We have over 200,000 practitioners using BlazeMeter for load testing or continuous testing, either free or paid. So we have a true global reach. We're getting 160 or so incoming leads per day. And what we're doing now is our data scientist on staff, Effie, he's going to be compiling a hot list of cross-referencing CA customers who also use BlazeMeter, whether it's free or paid. So that's going to be our first a hot list for the customer base. And then our BlazeMeter sales reps are engaging, obviously, DevOps teams to sell continuous testing. And again, we're so integrated into how these companies deliver code to their pipeline that they have to be testing every day, continuous testing early and often to make sure the application that goes out there is delivered on time, on budget, and is reliable.
Thanks for joining this call. I must say up front that I am very excited. Obviously, most people are, but very excited to have blazemeter on board. When we talk about that there's synergies, the whole reason why we even look at blazemeter is because of the massive synergies that it has with our current offerings.
Now, this is our regular differentiation slide. Continuous, develop continuously, test continuously. And so I already mentioned that earlier about continuous testing. And so having app test and blazemeter together, we now have a way of doing a lot of testing where we can do that continuously, not just with the QA group. We can do this inside of the sprints with the agile teams. They can do the testing. Well, a lot of developers already know JMeter. They can set those up. JMeter is fantastic, and then having that integration from that open source into the blazemeter so that they don't have to manage all their load testing systems, get all that set up, and then obviously release continuously. That goes down to our continuous delivery through RA and RACDE. So having all these combined, this continuous paradigm where we're helping people constantly develop, constantly test, constantly release. Continuous development, continuous deployment is the overall arching theme. Continuous testing fits right under that continuous delivery. You can't do continuous delivery if you can't do continuous testing. And that is really how we're differentiated. I've talked to so many customers about this, and I haven't found with any of the customers that I've talked to that they're hearing the same story from any other vendor, because no other vendor can tell the story like we can. Other vendors will have portions of the story, but we have a totality in the story that we can do end-to-end, and we can help guide our customers' growth from wherever they want to start, whether they want to start with the requirements, whether they want to start with the testing, whether they want to start with the release. We can help guide them and grow them to get to an entire agile, continuous story. Hopefully, this was a very quick conversation, very quick rundown as to what we're doing, why we chose blazemeter, why it works really well with our CDBU, how it's going to work across the board, not just with our products, but with other products and other BUs. And we're really excited to start seeing this all come together.